At Honda, when we race, you win. Because innovation on the racetrack, like the improved safety of Honda sensing technology and greater fuel efficiency with Econ mode, means a better ride for you. And with vehicles in stock and arriving weekly, you'll woohoo even more. Woohoo! Lease the all-new 2023 CR-V LXB two-wheel drive today from just $99 weekly at 7.59%. For 60 months, $4,400 down. Always see taxes extra excludes hybrid. See HondaOntario.com.
Big guests and bigger opinions on everything happening in Leafsland. Real Kipper and Bourne. Be sure to subscribe and download the show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sportsnet 590, The Fan.
Hello and welcome to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Make sure you find the Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe, and please rate and review the show. Reminder, we're streaming live on Sportsnet's YouTube channel and airing live on Sportsnet 360 Monday to Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. I'm your host, William Liu. I'm joined by producer and co-host Alex Wong. What's going on, Alex? Did you spend your entire weekend trawling for salacious details in regards to Nick Nurse and his coaching staff, like the rest of diehard Raptor fans were, waiting on every successive column to hear more and more dirt?
Yeah, of course. Everybody wants the Nick Nurse tea, so we're going to have a little afternoon tea party. First of all, for people watching visually, too, Will's wearing a hat today, just because he's getting ready to do a lot of capping this hour, pretty sure. That's what he's going to be doing. That's what he does on the show all the time.
That's what we do, baby. That's
yeah.
what we do. We shill.
We got some playoff basketball, too. Unfortunately, I have another Dylan Brooks update for you.
I saw a really great story about Dylan Brooks in The Guardian, of all places.
Oh, by our friend of the program, Oren Weisfeld.
That's right.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Wow.
But
some friend you are.
Definitely going to get to that.
I already got to it, man.
Oh, okay.
Just like I'm getting to your manuscript.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Will has obtained a copy of a manuscript to Prehistoric. Graciously asked him to provide a blurb. It's what you do when you write books. Ask your friends to blurb it for you.
That's why they're all going to be positive, man. No one's going to, again, I'm just getting ready to shill, man.
Once again, man, this guy getting ready to do a lot of capping.
That's why I got my Hong Shing hat on.
No, but like Friday we came in here, obviously, from the Masai presser and like processing the news of Nick.
Sure.
Had a weekend to really think about it. Obviously, lots of news, lots of articles coming out, hearing about, the many reasons for Nick's departure. And some of the main things is, friction between the front office and Nick about playing some of the guys on the roster. And it was interesting, too, to hear about the friction between Nick and the coaching staff. Doug Smith, Toronto Star, cited a rather frosty relationship between Nick and Earl Watson.
Interesting.
During the season. And Jay Lou of the other network reported that an assistant was sent home for a game during a road trip.
I wonder who that assistant was.
Without the front office's knowledge. And, of course, our own, Sportsnet's own Michael Grange wrote a great article on this as well, tackling some of these things. So thought I'd get Grange on the line for this afternoon tea party.
Okay.
So we've got Grange on the line to join us to talk about Nick and other Raptors things. What's going on, Grange?
How are you? How's everybody?
We're all right, Grange. Are you good?
I'm good. I'm just getting the echo. Like I'm hearing my voice in my ear. Can you guys call me right back?
All right.
Yeah,
we're gonna get our producer on that.
Yeah, we're gonna call you right back. But yeah, what did you make? Just couple days processing the Nick Nurse firing.
Well, I mean, I think first off, like, it was interesting, even just watching the whole fallout of this. I think when it really started was when Nick came out and made those comments in Philly, right? And what's been interesting is, typically the way people would build relationships with the media, if they so choose to, which coaches always do. You have like maybe supporters and backers, just like anybody, right? Like,
two sides to everything.
People who like you, people who don't.
Yeah.
It's funny in this situation seeing like the universal reaction is he's got to go.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
You know what I mean? And since then, obviously this is standard fare. People trying to explain what happened, right? The details come out. And that's just the job of reporters. But I did think that it was interesting that even as it happened, like he got 0% public support media-wise. It wasn't like, hey, you guys are going too hard at Nick Nurse, or no one wrote a column like, hey, Nick Nurse is not at fault for what's going on here. Everyone was like, all right, he shouldn't have said this, and we'll see what happens. But anyway, Grange, we got you on the line. We were just talking about the idea that, like, since he made his comments in Philly, it feels like the commentary around Nick has been sort of universally negative. Like, I thought it was interesting that nobody really stepped out and was like, hey, let's just defend Nick on this one. Was that interesting to you as well?
It was a little bit interesting, I guess, from the point of view of, I guess, I think the way he handled it subsequently when he was, people were actually able to ask a follow-up or two on it. And, he was, pretty dismissive of it. And I think also the fact that, his reasoning for why he even had to kind of address the subject in the first place wasn't accurate. And, and then even in his end of season, media conference, he kind of went down the same road. And I said to him, I go, the way you're explaining it isn't the way it happened, isn't, the fact that no one had ever asked him about his future or what was going to be happening in the off season. That was, there was Doug Smith wrote a story and, and no one else had talked about it before that. And then the first chance anyone had a chance to ask him about it, he shut it down. And so I think that sort of hurt his credibility a little bit, or his case a little bit. Like had he allowed it to kind of air out a little, people would have maybe looked at things a little different. And I think also, I think for a guy who was ultimately fired, I think the big thing is he kind of got the sense that Nick was very okay with being fired. Mm-hmm. And everyone was kind of okay with Nick being fired, acknowledging all he'd done, right? Like he'd done, out of the 5 years, he'd done really good work in most of them. Yep. And, I'm not even of the camp that says he was at fault for everything that happened this year. Mm-hmm. But, I just think that, these things run their course. And that's sort of, from my point of view, I can't speak for other people, but how I handled it.
Yeah. By the way, if you want more details on this, Grange has a column up on sportsnet.ca. Firing Nick Nurse was straightforward. Where the Raptors go next isn't as clear. And in this piece, you have a couple of details in terms of obviously why the relationship fell apart, or sort of where the front office and management and coaching didn't see eye to eye in this case. So can you walk us through a couple of the examples of, what did the front office want more of that ultimately led them to severing this relationship?
Yeah, I think the overarching theme for sure, and Masai kind of kept hitting on it over and over again, was there just a sense of malaise, a lack of spirit, a lack of energy, excitement, enthusiasm, whatever it might be. And, so you're okay, well, how does that manifest itself? And why is it, why does the lack of it seem to be such an issue here? And, a couple of different things did come up. And, one thing, as everyone's touched on, is just the way he managed his, the younger players on the roster in terms of a steady diet of playing time, not just this year, but last year. And I think that kind of, I think that really rankled management. I think it set the team back a little bit. And, in Nick's defense, he's trying to squeeze out as many wins as he can. So he's going to play his best 6 or 7 guys, and, everyone else can figure it out. But, I think that it does create a problem. I think there was also kind of a morale problem on the team. Like when you're, got half of your roster who just barely plays, or when they do or they don't play, it's kind of a mystery to everybody. I think over time there's a bit of a corrosive effect there. And we certainly all are, examples of players coming into the lineup and not having any insight as to why, and then not being in the lineup and not necessarily having very much insight into why. I think that's one thing. I think, the assistant coach stuff is, that's not why Nick gets fired, but I think it does create kind of an atmosphere where, is everyone on the same page? Is the coach really managing his staff as well as it need be? Is there a lot of trust between the staff? And these staffs are huge now, right? Right. I think there's 9 assistants and there's 4 other video coaches / development coaches. Like you're basically got 13 people aside from medical who are in some way, shape, or form hands-on with players. And if, so by definition, the head coach is probably a little more hands-off. And if he's not believing, trusting, empowering, or perceived to be doing all those things, then then you're going to run into problems. And you would hear it occasionally through the season. I know, talking to a couple of assistant coaches on other teams, it's a very small universe out there, and everyone seems to know somebody. And you would kind of get that feedback where it's like, the vibes were not good, so to speak. It wasn't a really cohesive group, I think was the word I used. And again, I would point out that that's not incredibly unusual. You know what I mean? Like it's not it's not unusual for a head coach to be sometimes get paranoid of some of the assistants. That's why a lot of times, some assistants, and it's been here in Toronto now for a couple of head coaches where, assistant coaches aren't allowed to talk to the media, because they just don't want messages being mixed. And, if one assistant coach is talking, then the other assistant coach wishes he could have his profile being raised, that kind of stuff. But I think, again, when you're struggling, not meeting expectations, these things get exacerbated. And I think, those are kind of, and then I think the third thing was, and it kind of falls under the heading of accountability. And are you really, holding players to a certain standard on a consistent basis, regardless of where they stand on your roster? And I think, and I think that was something that I feel like management felt was lacking a little bit. Like with the younger players, it wasn't just enough to kind of, you just can't say, you got to be really specific and structured in terms of how you're bringing them along and rewarding or not rewarding them with playing time. That didn't always happen. And then I think, in a larger sense, you've got a team, selfishness keeps getting referenced and whatever else, complacency. I mean, at some point the head coach has to be, a person who can kind of sniff that out, root it out, and stamp it out. And I don't think that was necessarily happening at a level that management was happy with. I mean, obviously, if they were, maybe Nick would still be working. And and I think I'm just kind of surmising here, but I do have examples of where Masai would have to, speak to the team, address the team at different junctures, talking to different players about that. And, on one level, I think it's good, to have a management figure, an executive figure who really carries a ton of weight, like kind of like a Pat Riley type thing. Not to say Masai and Pat Riley are in the same breath, but also it puts the management in a difficult situation where if you're doing it, more than on the rarest occasions, are you undermining the coaches because the coach doesn't have the, the proper or the means to be doing on his own. And I think that was kind of one of the things that was kind of surfaced as they went through this process, not just them last week or so, but over the course of the season.
Yeah, I think too, like to the point about the lack of playing time for the young players, which I thought was stood out to me, just like, reading your story, I guess my pushback would be too, if I was Nick, is like, you look at the young players on his team. Obviously, I know Scotty, played a lot. Precious was up and down, had injuries. But then you go down the list, you look at guys like, Malachi Flynn, Delano Banton, like Jeff Down Jr., basically every backup guard. Like the roster wasn't like stocked with guys who, even when given an opportunity, show that they deserve more, right? So that to me is like, I almost feel like, and again, I know that you're not firing Nick for this one particular reason. I think all the stuff that you mentioned, as a whole, does justify the firing. But this particular point to me is like, at some point, that's on the front office too, to give him, equip him with a good enough roster that he's got guys that he can play.
Oh, and I've been clear on that. I mean, I wrote about that on Friday. I'm touching on it, something I'm doing right now. I mean, I think the way management would, the way they would explain it is they don't feel like they know what they have because of, it could be very well be true that Malachi Flynn is not a guy who can help you win NBA games on a regular level. Like you could just go down through the list and they might not be good enough. But I think the flip side of that would be we can't be sure because we just haven't seen them be put in situations consistently enough where they can succeed. And, but there's, and it's absurd to think that this roster is without holes and that it was, it underachieved to the extent it did purely because of coaching. In fact, you could almost argue it got to where it did because of coaching, which created its own problem. But, I'm not saying these are justified, but I just think that, and I think also, I do think there is a part of this where, it got to a certain stage where, I think these questions are being raised. You look at that 2-month period between the end of November, that's the kind of the Brooklyn, New Orleans, those two games, to right through to kind of the first week of February there when stuff's really heating up around the trade deadline. I think they were 12-21 over that stretch. And, had Nick been fired at that point, I think Nick would have he would have been fine with it. I really don't think he would have felt like he'd been hard done by. And I think similarly, if Nick had gone through this whole process and said, I definitely want to keep this job, I see where, I can make some changes. I think I'm the best guy for this group and let's do it. And if you want to give me one more year and on top of the one I got, I'll do it. You know what I mean? Like if that had been the energy, then maybe they would have found a middle ground and he'd still be here. But I think on both sides there was that. I think Nick looks at this team, I'm sure he does, and looks at it and goes, where is the next step with this group? And, and if I'm not going to be given real support, either financially or in any other sense, then, I'm not sure I want to go into my last year of this deal, with this group. So I think that's exactly to what you're saying.
Yeah, no, that would be fair because I think that for a lot of people who, really like Nick or who are confused by this idea that he would get moved on, it's like, well, if you're telling me that Nick got let go because he didn't play Malachi Flynn more or Delano Banton more, it's like, I mean, come on, right? Like, I think for a lot of fans, they're not really seeing much from those guys anyway. But I think for me, the curious thing is, in terms of the relationships with the more important players, the players that end up playing 40 minutes a night, who are in the starting lineup, things like that. Did you get the sense that Nick was still able to reach them in the same way that you would need to in order to be effective as a coach?
I mean, I think so. I can only go by what Fred said and OG said, and like even Pascal. I mean,
what are they supposed to say, Grange? If they went on that podium that day and was like, yeah, Nick, we're not so hot on Nick. I mean, it would be a huge story, right? So
it would, but I mean, I think that even down the stretch there, just talking to people close to the situation, thought Nick was pretty dialed in. Thought that he had things going the right direction. I think Fred's pretty. If he wanted to sound lukewarm on Nick, he could probably do it without creating that big a story. And I thought I was almost surprised by the endorsement he had. He could have endorsed Nick and said, look, he's an awesome coach, but I understand this business, things change. That's not what he said.
Sure.
He said he's an awesome coach and I'd be surprised if he's not back. OG similarly. And, Pascal, they've had definitely their issues. I've documented them. But I think they function. But I just think that there was overall maybe not the right enthusiasm for the task at hand that, Masai is looking for from his head coach and his staff. And, but that's a lot of chicken and egg there, you're trying, you're knocking your head against the wall. You've got a roster where nobody can shoot or not enough guys can shoot. For most of the season, you played without a center. You haven't had a backup point guard in 2 years. You know what I mean? Like it's, you can make the case and whether it was, the way they play was Nick Nurse trying to reinvent the wheel or was him going, my understanding of how they decided to kind of use the possession game as their kind of secret sauce really stemmed from them no longer having Marcus Hall and Serge Ibaka and no centers at all, frankly, once they realized, they couldn't really use Alex Len and Baines back in Tampa. And so they kind of said, okay, we're going to try things a little differently. And even this year, as we've talked about, they executed that. They achieved, the shot differentials they wanted, the possession differentials they wanted, but they were just always undone by, poor shooting and the kind of the lack of resistance once teams didn't turn it over. So, you could say Nick, you got to give Nick credit for that because that was what he was trying to do. And for the most part, they did it. I think it's a hard way to play. I think you saw lots of occasions where the team executed it, at a pretty high level. And so I never, I don't sit here and go, yeah, this team quit, this guy quit on Nick or that guy quit on Nick or, I just didn't see it. And, but at the same time, if you're not all the way in as a head coach, then you probably, you need to find another spot.
No, that's fair. Okay, we got to get to the two juicy points. So number one, this rift in the coaching staff. Can you take us behind the scenes in terms of like what are we talking about here? Because we never get to hear from the assistants, right? I think by the way, Nick also even mentioned in his year-end press conference, he's like, we could bring the assistants up here, and I'm like, could we, Nick? But anyway, what's going on there?
Yeah, I just think that there was a little bit, like as I said before, it's a big staff. I think when you look at the makeup of the staff, there's guys who were, kind of have a long history with Nick, and for all obvious reasons, would be super loyal with him. And then you have some guys who were brought in more recently, and I think maybe or have certain attachments to certain players. I know there was it was important, very important when Pascal Siakam, they were trying to get him back on track, and that's where you saw Earl Watson come in, who's got a long relationship with Pascal through his agent and through Rico Hines, who's had a long relationship with the whole organization in the summers, but also is a guy who's really close with Pascal. So you have a bit of that, and again, I'm not going to oversell this. Like I'm not going to sit here and just say I have a lot of insight into exactly the interplay that was there. But as I said, you got a big staff from different backgrounds. I don't think very much of this bubbled over, but I think at times there was some stress and some tension. And I think some of this is some speculation that I think Nick was concerned about Earl Watson. But, again, I don't have any of that firsthand. So that's why I didn't include it in my article. And I just think that, what I know is there was a reputation or an understanding that the staff wasn't on the same page and kind of pulling in the same rope, on the same rope at the same time as would be ideal. And I think, and that, that, again, I guess people have told me that reflects on the head coach. I'm not saying,
sure.
I'm sure Nick would tell the story very differently.
Yeah, I'm sure. And that is, especially when things sort of start to fall out, right? I mean, there's like, people will come to you with information, but you got to really think about where they're coming from and whose perspective is that being shared. I mean, I think the other thing too, you mentioned it briefly, but I think when you see a head coach let go like this, you start to look through all their history. And obviously there was that episode in Tampa with Nick and Pascal. I remember the game very clearly. The Raptors were losing against the Cavaliers, and it wasn't this Cavaliers team. Trust me, it was a much different Cavaliers. I think Dean Wade was still there, but it was like Colin Sexton.
Dean Wade's still there, man.
Yeah. But like, it was a different Cavs team.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the Raptors were starting slow, and then they closed the game, I think, with Stanley Johnson and Pat McCaw in the fourth quarter. I don't think Pascal saw the floor until maybe late in the game. And there was that dispute afterwards. It was reported on by Shams that year. Shams had a lot of info on the Raptors that season. But Grange, can you just, not to go over old history, but it is probably worth mentioning, especially now that Nick is gone. Like, what was the deal there?
I think I reported it at the time, and certainly in the feature I did on Pascal. It was intense. It was intense. It was it was a coach and player. Kind of, I think Pascal's frustration was not, I'm supposed to be a primary player. I'm not on the floor for in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
I think there'd been maybe one other incident too, like in terms of playing time, and it just kind of boiled over. Again, tough year in Tampa, all the rest of it.
Yep.
And it was, it was the way it was explained to me at the time was it wasn't your standard coach player blow up. It was, and Pascal kind of took it to the next level, so to speak. And, I'm not going to say on radio what I've been told, but it was, what I reported was what I reported. And,
right.
But, in saying all of that, they had a really good season working together the year after. These things do find a way of getting resolved. And I don't think that's the reason or had any reason in what's going on here. So I would love to give you guys every little tidbit of gossip I've ever heard, but I'm not going to do that because
damn it,
I'm the person who has to be accountable for that. So I hate to break your heart.
That's fair. That's what the arena is for. That's why we talk and practice and stuff.
Grange. So I love to put together parlays myself. So do you think the parlay of Nick Nurse to Houston and Ime Udoka to Toronto, you think that's a good parlay?
I mean, it's okay. I don't think any of those things are guaranteed. I just think it's. I think a lot of this stuff is just conjecture. I'm not saying there's no fire at all because there's certainly plenty of smoke, but I know the Raptors are going to be looking at several names. I'm sure Ime Udoka, who's got. He's got a chance to write a ticket here. He's kind of a hot commodity. I'm sure he's going to be very careful about where he signs and with who. And I'm sure Houston, and even more so after the draft lottery, they could be the destination for, they're going to get a lot of, they're going to get their choice of candidates too. So it's a reasonable parlay, but I mean, it's a parlay, right? So you're probably going to lose.
Appreciate that. No, I think too with obviously Ime's name being in like all the coaching, vacancies. Like, this would be a slightly different case given the way that he, left the Boston Celtics job, was let go from the job, and I think there's still a lot of murky details around it and all this stuff. Like, what do you think the steps are for the Raptors as an organization that they have to take in order to be comfortable with making that hiring? Because there is going to be a PR side of this too, right?
Oh, big time. And I think comfortable is the word, and the way, you need to be in this situation. I can only go by what, they've done in the past, right? And they have had players in here who've had, domestic incidents in their past, and they've dealt with those in certain ways. If you go back to the AJ Griffin thing where he was about to be hired or was certainly in the running for the job with the Bulls, and some stuff from his past bubbled up, and I think what they've done in these cases is they do their own due diligence. They make sure that and by the way, the Udoka thing, there's no domestic violence component to it, so let's not confuse the issues here. But I think they just need to go and be sure that what happened and how it happened is something that they can live with. That's something that is, if whatever standards are in place here can be met and kept, and that everyone who has to sign off on it, right up to ownership, is comfortable with it. I think. So I think it's just that. It's just a lot of background, a lot of due diligence, a lot of conversations, and a lot of people who, have, the reputations and the image of the organization at stake have to be fully aware of, whatever risks, if there are any risks, to taking on any new hire. But I guess with Udoka, there's, kind of a recent example. And, I think the flip side of that is, it sounds like it was an interpersonal thing, and it was against team policy. And, he he sat out a year. He lost his job. So, I mean, does that prevent him from being a candidate for any other job going forward? That's something the Raptors are going to have to be comfortable with. But I suspect he'll probably work in the NBA again.
Yeah. How far did Ime get in terms of the rounds of interviews back in 2018 before they ultimately won with Nick?
I think he was up there. I think at the time, the feeling was he was just like he wasn't experienced enough. I mean, which is ironic because they hired Nick, who also didn't have NBA head coaching experience, but he did have decades of head coaching experience, as well as they knew him really well as an internal candidate. So, I think depending on who you talk to, Bud was the one who got away. I think Nick was the next. Some would say that they chose not to hire Bud, that they preferred Nick in the first place. Sure. And that Nick emerged out of a pool of candidates included. I think Rek Kalamian was one of them, and Ime Udoka was another. And I think he was a very serious candidate, but I just think it was the job. It wasn't time for him to have that job.
That's fair. And then if it's not Ime, which is the name that's been most commonly linked, I mean, who else do you think could be in the mix? Would Earl be in the mix? Because that'd be spicy.
I'd be very surprised if it's Earl.
Okay. Right.
I mean, not that Earl's not. I'm sure he'll end up as a head coach somewhere, but I just don't think that it would be him.
So it's not a Nick Nurse, Dwayne Casey situation.
No, I don't think so.
Got you.
I'd be 100. Unless you count Adrian Griffin. So, I think Adrian Griffin will be. He'll get a serious consideration. I think. I'll be interested to see how far Patrick Mutombo gets in the process. When you talk about, the reference to energy and spirit and accountability and character, like Patrick Mutombo checks a lot of boxes. And again, his shortcoming would be not only had NBA head coaching experiences, but head coach experience. He's had, I guess, the 2 years in the G League, I think. But I think he would rate really strongly in some of the other areas. And, and I think you're going to see some names a little bit off the board. But, I mean, it's I don't think it'll be an internal candidate. And, Udoka certainly keeps getting mentioned, so I presume he's kind of the favorite. But I think that there is a process involved. And, the one name that I've seen out there that kind of raised some eyebrows for me was Patrick Mutombo. I think he, just because of what I said, I think he would meet a lot of criteria if he could get over the experience element.
Fair enough. Alex, anything else?
No, that's
Any
it.
Info you want to get from Grange?
No, I think.
So Grange, what do you do with your summer now that we're done obsessing about the Raptors until at least the draft?
Well, it'll be busy, right? Trying to figure out who's going to get hired as a coach and what changes they are going to make, and then there's some Canada basketball stuff to deal with, and there's
that's right. Kentucky's coming.
That's right. Yeah.
That's going to be really fun this summer, man.
It's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
And shout out to Nate Mitchell, who's the head coach of that U23 team. Did a great job with them last year.
Yep. Is he sticking around, by the way?
No, he is not sticking around as far as I know. So, tough one. But he'll land on his feet. He's got a good reputation. Yeah. So, I think it's funny. Like the season ends and you figure, what to do now, and then you kind of wake up and there's about 10 things I should probably do. So, it'll filter out. So don't worry about me. Thanks, though.
All right. Well, we'll bug you again, Grange, soon enough. But appreciate your time. Read everything Grange does on sportsnet.ca. And Grange, if we don't see you again until the next press conference, we'll hear more of the salacious off-air details then. All right.
Sounds good. All right. Be good, guys. Take care.
All right. That was our very own Michael Grange. You satisfied? Did you feel like answers were given?
Yeah. You happy? Why did you take off your cap? You stopped capping?
I think JR, our producer, messaged me on Twitter and said, take the hat off. So
why? Why did you fold to JR, man? When have we ever listened to JR?
Fine. The hat's going back on. How about that?
No, I think the Nick thing, I think the Nick thing is interesting, like hearing about all the different factors. And I think the thing I come away with is just like, we've talked about this, is like being a head coach is more than just about the X's and O's. What's the other one that you say? The Jimmies and Joes.
It's about the Jimmies and Joes.
It is about the Jimmy, like the
it
people
was Joe
skills.
Wieskamp,
Yeah, it was no, but like the people skills part of it is interesting, right? Like even you digging back up the which Grange was thrilled to revisit the Pascal Tampa incident. You just dug into your bag
man.
randomly.
I'm sorry. When we get Grange on, all we got to do is like, can we get aggregated on this episode? Can I get anything out of Grange?
We're like in the mines scraping for gold. Man. It's wild.
Hey, man, listen, that's what we do.
No, but
we work hard for our listeners.
Even bringing that up, and then you think about, like, to me, I think about like Nick had 2 different jobs here in his 5 years. Like when he was hired, his first job the first 2 years was to lead a championship contender, right? Like a veteran laden team. And then you look at Tampa as a transition year. And then the last 2 years, he's had to coach a new roster and a mix of younger guys and, you know, championship holdover guys. And I think for me, when I look at it, it's like Nick did a really good job. I mean, Nick did a best job he could because he won a championship in that first year.
Of course.
For the first part, but for the second part, he fell short in a lot of these things. And that's why he's gone. Right?
It'd be an interesting fit in Houston, man.
Why, you don't think him and Kevin Porter Jr. is gonna get along?
Yeah.
Well, here's a dream for Houston though. It's like they get James Harden, which again before Philly,
these are huge dreams. By the way.
Before Philly swept Brooklyn, like over the weekend, another report came out that James Harden is thinking about Houston. Like, can we time these reports better? It's happened on Christmas, and the day before they win a first round series.
Yeah, that'd be sick, man.
But like they could potentially have Nick Nurse, James Harden, and Victor Wembanyama. That would be
these are
that would be the
dreams,
dream.
man. These are 3 dreams. Only one of them's gonna come true.
I wouldn't put that on a parlay either, but
that'd be
that's
sick.
the best case scenario, though. Anyways,
no, you're absolutely right though. Like the point about managing people, right? I mean, like even thinking about it now, it's just like, I mean, if he didn't manage his staff well. Like, what about the roster?
No, but
you know what I mean? Like, how difficult can assistant coaches be ultimately? Like, even if you believe the reports about, like, Earl was there and, like, maybe they didn't get along. I mean, saw plenty of players work with Earl. I don't think there's any issue with players working with Earl, that's for sure. But, like, even if that was the case or even it got paranoid, it's like, man, at the end of the day, like, you're managing a 50-year-old, like, or a 40-year-old. Like, it can't be that much harder than, like, managing 20-year-olds who are millionaires and going through a more pressure-packed, environment when they're actually firmly in the public spotlight. So, yeah, I mean, I think the people management aspect is really important. And I think that, the next person who comes in has to sort of do that. Because, again, like, when we think about coaching, we focus so much on, like, the tactics portion. This guy drew up an amazing play. He's an amazing coach. Like, absolutely. I want that out of all my coaches, right? But, like, more than anything else, the head coach is kind of, wouldn't like say like a CEO, but like, you're not actually on the ground and you're getting your hands dirty most of the time.
He needs to be a CE bro. Yeah, that's a Succession reference. Yeah, go on.
What?
Yeah.
All right.
You need to be a CE bro. You need to handle that business, but also be a bro to the players.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm trying, man. One of us needs to watch Succession. No,
I suppose that will be kind of fitting.
And that's the thing to me. It's like, I see some fans reacting too, being like, oh my God, how could we let a head coach go, and the minute that coach is gone, every other team, like a Houston, other teams are like clamoring for him, right? Like, why are we letting a coach? But it's like,
I mean, they had Steven Silas for 3 years. Like, I've been
no, but the other
too,
thing
man.
too is like you have to have the right coach for right now, right? Like Nick, in retrospect, was the right coach during the championship run. But now you need a different voice, and I don't even think this needs to be a definitive criticism on Nick, because I'm sure wherever he goes next, he is going to do that self, evaluation.
He got to make more friends with reporters.
No, but we've heard you've read his book like 50 times, I believe.
I've read it
You've
twice.
referenced it many times. Okay, that's Cap again.
Yeah.
But like he always talks about how every year, as a head coach, he wants to come back. He talked about this as a season ender too. Like he wants to learn, like pick up new things and learn, right? I think this is huge for Nick at his next job to think about that aspect of coaching too, right? And I'm sure he will.
Absolutely.
Like I'm sure he's going to evolve. So like, it'll be interesting. Is that enough, Nick Nurse?
That's pretty good. I'm excited to not talk about him and maybe talk about other coaching candidates later on in the week. But for now, we're going to take a break. I've been your host, Walu. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Have you checked out BetRivers yet? Download the BetRivers online casino and sportsbook app today. Get in the action this basketball season with thousands of betting options. Plus, don't forget about BetRivers Sportsbook award-winning customer service. It's a whole new game with BetRivers online casino and sportsbook. Must be 18 plus. Available in Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you have questions or concerns about your gambling or someone close to you, please contact Connect Ontario at 1-866-531-2600 to speak to an advisor free of charge.
Hey everyone, Lindsay L here, host of Canada's Got Talent.
We create stars here.
This season keeps getting better.
My heart is literally racing. That was insane.
Don't miss another must-see audition night this Tuesday.
Wow, look at that. Everybody in the audience on their feet.
And find out which acts will make it through to the semifinals.
It's a lot of yeses. A lot of yeses.
This is going to be the hardest deliberation I've ever been part of.
Canada's Got Talent, all new, Tuesdays, 8/7 Central on City TV, or stream it on City TV Plus.
It's time to get back to the road in a vehicle designed to perform. For an automotive experience unlike any other. Gear up for spring with Lexus F-Sport.
For details on how you can gear up for spring with Lexus F-Sport, visit your local Lexus dealer or lexus.ca.
Looking to grow your equipment fleet? Join United Rentals in Oshawa May 4th for the Spring Used Equipment Sale. Browse over 4,000 classes of equipment, originally sourced from top-tier manufacturers and expertly maintained. From aerial work platforms to earth-moving equipment and everything in between, United Rentals has the equipment to build your fleet and get the job done. Plus, they offer special financing and service plans. For more information on United Rentals Oshawa event on Thursday, May 4th, contact them today at 905-576-7200.
No high prices! It was a rainy day when Pizzaville decided to do what it could to stop world prices from spiralling out of control. With the large pickup special, get a large one-topping pizza for only $11.99. $11.99 for a large pizza?
Long live Pizzaville!
Call Pizzaville for the large pickup special at 736-3636.
Rayul's got big nose!
Or online at pizzaville.ca.
At Specsavers, you can get 2 pairs of glasses for $149, which is where Dave, my husband, should have gone before we hit the road.
Oh, well,
But instead, I've just driven 4.5 hours to turn around and drive 4.5 hours home because that's where he left his only pair.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe I should have,
Should have gone to Specsavers. Book an eye exam today, including standard single vision lenses to the same prescription. Conditions at specsavers.ca.
When the game starts, the betting doesn't stop at BetRivers Online Sportsbook and Casino. BetRivers is live streaming a massive number of matches every day from around the world. Every day, you can watch and wager on live sports right on your phone. Download the BetRivers Online Sportsbook and Casino app and start betting today. BetRivers.ca. It's a whole new game.
19 plus, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you have questions or concerns about your gambling or someone close to you, please contact Connects Ontario at 1-866-531-2600 to speak to an advisor free of charge.
Welcome back to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Win Luke. You can be joined by producer and co-host Alex Wong. Big shouts to Michael Grange for blessing us with scoops in the first segment. And we will talk about the rest of the league now, thankfully, because it was a lot of great basketball. But Alex, you have two notes that you want to pass along.
Yeah, no, you guys mentioned it briefly in the first segment. So it was announced today that the Kentucky men's basketball team and the Louisville women's basketball team will represent the United States at Global Jam, July 12th to the 16th. And you can get more information at globaljam.ca. Or at Ticketmaster, get your tickets now.
Yeah.
That's exciting news, man.
Oh, I'm excited to go. We went last summer as well, which, by the way, we got to see. Baylor was the team that came in, and we got to see Keontae George, who has been mocked to the Raptors many times.
Oh, word?
I'm already starting to kind of look a little bit ahead to the draft in terms of, like, who the Raptors might potentially take. Obviously, we don't know until the draft lottery officially takes place, but most likely the Raptors will pick like 13th, I think.
Not if they send Otto Porter there. Yeah. A little lucky charm.
They better send his toe over there.
Oh my God, he's going to put his toe on the table.
Man. But yeah, no, Global Jam was a really fun time last summer. And
it's great. Everybody should go get tickets and check that out. So
and plus it's Kentucky. So I mean, you'll probably see a lot of like former players who were, Canadians on Kentucky.
Like a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah. Name some more.
Anyways, congrats to my friend John and his wife Julie. Welcomed their first child into the world at 4:20 p.m.
Nice.
Yesterday.
Nice.
Everly Lena Ing, weighing at 8 pounds. This is like introducing a boxing match. I feel like Michael Buffer right now.
I thought this was the
let's
intro
get ready to rumble. What?
I thought this was the intro to December 4th.
Oh,
classic
wow.
Jay-Z song.
Shows to hope. That's why you need
Sean
to watch.
Carter was born on December 4th.
He fell off a bike.
In it.
That's when I knew he was special.
Yeah. So is that what you're going to say about Everly?
You got to watch Succession, man. Great opening scene last night with Jay-Z Takeover. Oh, my God.
I wasn't there.
Anyways, congrats to John. John, I've told you over and over, don't have kids. But now that you have a kid,
Amen.
I wish you the best of luck.
Amen.
Lena, also the middle name because that's where John and Julie had their first date, I believe. Yeah. So it almost was Everly Harbor 60ing. Anyways, at 4:20 p.m. yesterday, as John and Julie welcomed their first child, I believe that was around when the Sacramento Kings were going up against the Golden State Warriors.
Man.
The Warriors even up the series, 126-125 win. Harrison Barnes with a chance to really have his career moment against his former team. The team that he struggled so much when he was on that 2016-73 win team in the finals.
There's always one guy that gets bullied on a team, and he was that guy.
I mean, to the point where Festus Ezeli was playing crunch time over him in the finals against LeBron, who was on his greatest of all time behavior. Can we get... Yeah, thank you. Anyways, lots of storylines here. Draymond came back and asked to come off the bench.
And then told everybody about it.
And then told him on the podcast. And then said, I don't want to make it about me.
By the way, did he podcast after he got suspended or no?
He did after the Warriors won Game 3. So he skipped.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you.
And
hey, listen,
Draymond Green Show number 3 on the podcast.
We're still
charts.
above the Draymond Green Show?
We remain number 1. Keep listening.
Thank you, front office, for firing Nick. I think that probably single-handedly.
Thank you, Masai, for saying you didn't enjoy the basketball this year, as I've been saying for 6 months.
We need that as a drop.
Steph Curry almost blew the game at the end there. They were up 5 points with 40 seconds left, and Steph called a timeout, even though they had just used their final timeout on a challenge.
That was a terrible challenge, and it's even worse that they challenged a terrible call while also exhausting their last timeout in doing so.
Yeah, and Kings come back, hit a 3. and hit the technical as well. So it was a 4-point play.
Yep.
So that's why they're trailing by 1. And then there was like 31 seconds left on the clock. Warriors ball. Actually less than that. I think it was like 27 seconds. And like I was like, man, should the Kings foul here?
There was like a 4-second.
Yeah, if the Warriors run down the clock and like Kevon Looney does his thing where he like tips an offensive rebound, like the game's over, right?
Sure. Yeah.
They don't foul, and Steph goes for a shot with like 12 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people saying that was a bad shot by Steph. I don't think Steph is capable of taking bad shots.
Okay, but
I believe he's going to make every shot.
But in that situation, like you got to value time management, though, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, he almost became, the scapegoat. No, we need a different sound for goats and scapegoat. Maybe like a lower. Yeah, let's work on that. Why are you actively doing noises without? Oh, man.
Trying to stay above. We're doing anything to stay above Draymond right now.
Different when you're doing anything to push Dylan Brooks to tomorrow, which you have successfully done.
Nice.
Anyways, they win the game.
Yeah.
And now it's 2-2. Game 5 is on Wednesday. Gonna check in on Andy Liu, see if we can get him back on for Thursday.
We gotta call him at Coachella or what? We're gonna hear Dua Lipa in the background.
This guy harder to track down than Frank Ocean.
We're gonna hear Boombayah. But
to me, like the series 2-2 now, like back to Sacramento. I don't think anything's changed from when we talked about this series at the beginning. It's like, are the Warriors just gonna win with that championship experience? Can the Warriors win on the road? Are the Kings, is this moment too big for them, et cetera, et cetera? I feel like it's the exact same storyline now after we've gone through these first 4 games.
Yeah, so this series is just incredibly tense. Like, first off, 3 of the 4 games have really come down to the wire, and there's just incredible shot making on both sides. And I've already made this joke before on Twitter, but it's like the level of shot making by these guards, like Fox and Steph and Jordan Poole and Malik Monk and Klay Thompson, where they just walk down and like there's not really a shot, but they just like flick it up there, and obviously it just drops in over and over and over again, and guys getting to their shot all the time. It's just so like it's like a different sport as compared to sort of how the Raptors operate. I'm not even trying to say this in a rude way. I'm saying this as like a basketball observation way. Like the level of shot making is nuts.
But you could say that across all the playoffs. Like I think about Jalen Brunson for the Knicks. I think about Devin Booker for the Suns. No, but I think your point still stands.
Like you need that though.
When you get to this level,
yeah, absolutely.
Who's the guy that's going to get you those buckets? And a lot of these really good teams have like 3 guys.
Yeah.
That can do that for you. So
and I think what's really cool about this series is like the Kings are right there. Like they could have easily been up 3-1 after last night.
Yeah, but no what ifs when you're going against the champs, man. A game like yesterday,
yeah,
they should have won that one.
And here's the thing with the Warriors. They could have won they had a chance to win all 4 games already. I
feel like it's a great series because you could say that about the Kings too, right? The Kings could be up 3-1 right now, easily.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then what this series and the tension of this reminds me of is the Netflix series beef.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's just 2 teams just going at each other nonstop. They're escalating the stakes. There's violence involved.
Yeah.
They're just going back and forth.
Okay.
I'm just going to say there are Asians involved on both sides because there's lots of Asians in Sacramento and in San Francisco.
So they're just going to end up hallucinating in the desert? Spoilers? Yeah.
So who is who? Quickly, before we go to our last segment.
I'm not doing this. Man.
No?
I'm not ready for this.
All right.
You with the cap on is different.
I'm saying the Warriors are clearly Amy in this case. The affluent background, all that kind of stuff.
No, I like that.
And
that's Andy
and the
Liu
Kings
right there.
are Steven Yeun.
This is such an Andy Liu topic.
Yeah, we should have said this for Andy.
No, it's all good.
This is a rice in my veins.
No, it's all good. And now it's time for Between the Lines, brought to you by Bet Rivers. It's a whole new game. 2 games tonight. The one we're focusing on, the Miami Navy SEALs are up 2-1 against the Milwaukee Bucks after a 121-99 win in Game 3 at home. Game 4 is tonight in Miami, and Giannis, who has missed most of this series, reportedly will return to the lineup barring any setbacks tonight with his lower back contusion. This is a must-win for a Milwaukee team that everyone has, picking to probably potentially win it all. The Bucks are -8, 8-point favorites in Miami tonight. Giannis sounds like he's returning.
Yep.
I'm expecting the Bucks to just, if Giannis is back, to just blow the doors off tonight.
We keep saying this, but we got to give the Heat a lot of credit. Like, they put up a really good fight, man. No, they have. Absolutely, they have.
I refuse.
Absolutely, okay? Because even without Giannis, that team is still very difficult to play against. And the Heat have already taken 2 wins in that scenario. Obviously, with Giannis, it's an entirely different scenario, but I need to see how physically Giannis is doing, first and foremost.
Yeah.
Right? Because,
he not a Steph Curry jump shooter. Like, he needs to get in there.
Exactly. Giannis needs to be at his very best physically to dominate the game. And I also think that, like, if I'm the Miami Heat, if I'm Eric Spoelstra, all I'm showing them day after day or hour after hour is that video of Kevin Love stepping in there for a charge, which is essentially, I mean, that's what caused Giannis to have the back issues in the first place because he slid underneath for the charge. I'm asking every single one of my players to take a charge on Giannis tonight. If I'm Eric Spoelstra and the Navy SEALs, you know what I mean? So I think on that sense, like, is Giannis going to play with that level of aggressiveness? Is he going to trust his body to do so? And it's a back issue, right? Like, and it's already knocked him out of 2 games, so it's not like it's not serious. Having said all this, I do think Milwaukee will win.
Then why did you spend 2 minutes on Heat culture, man?
We had another minute to burn.
Could have called Jason Jackson.
You know how radio goes.
Oh my God, yeah. I think just having the presence of Giannis there, even if he's not 100%, having him as even a decoy, all of that stuff.
Yeah,
and add to the fact this is a must-win. I just want this series to return to normal, and normal is Milwaukee taking care of business. So
-8 though.
Yeah, why are you always shook whenever it's not a pick'em?
First off, I'm clearly
inexperienced when it comes to immigrant mentality, man.
Picking lines.
You're not trying to go to Costco and spot 8 points to anybody, man.
No, I'm not.
We're taking Bucks -8. That was Between the Lines, brought to you by Bet Rivers. It's a whole
I'm
new
taking
game.
Miami with the points. I don't care.
What?
Yeah.
After all that? This is the worst
I'm
2
very
minutes of
consistent,
radio
man.
ever, man.
That was Between the Lines, brought to you by Bet Rivers. It's a whole new game. And that does it for us today. I've been your host, Will Lou, and you've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Make sure you find The Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts. And please, please, please rate and review, subscribe to the show so we can stay above Dre Pod. Thanks once again to producer and co-host Alex Wong. Thanks to Michael Grange. Thanks to Austin Mackey filling in for board producer Derek Brandale and Danielle Gauthier for filling in for Jennifer Rolnick with the YouTube stream. See you tomorrow. Have you checked out Bet Rivers yet? Download the Bet Rivers online casino and sportsbook app today. Get in the action this basketball season with thousands of betting options. Plus, don't forget about Bet Rivers Sportsbook award-winning customer service. It's a whole new game with Bet Rivers online casino and sportsbook. Must be 18 plus. Available in Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you have questions or concerns about your gambling or someone close to you, please contact Connect Ontario at 1-866-531-2600 to speak to an advisor free of charge.